The Forgotten City, the unrecognized masterpiece, the diamond in the rough, the Mona Lisa of the art of gaming that didn't get enough recognition. In the famous trolley experiment, where a train is coming and on the tracks there are four people that are unable to move, and if somehow you can divert the course of the train to another track where two people are tied, would you do it? Now, at the face of it, it looks pretty straightforward. You have to decide the good for the greater number of people, right? That should be easy enough. But now imagine yourself as one of the two other people whose you, well, were about to crush, who were thanking God for one moment as they thought the fate has saved them, but then suddenly saw the tracks have changed. And now, first it was accidental and fated, and suddenly your interference has made it more, let's say, personal, because now you are relatively intentionally giving away those two people. At first, those six might have considered the outcome fated, but after your intervention, though for a good reason, although the four might consider you a savior, but the other two, before they were crushed by the train, considered you a murderer. So, should you risk being the reason behind the relatively intentional killing of the two people, or would you rather not interfere at all and let the fate have its course, knowing that you might have done something and, well, you didn't do it? Now looking at it this way has made it more, let's say, complicated to decide, and indecision also seems immoral, right? So I'm not saying that there is a right or wrong answer to it, or it's just different perspectives, of course. But then again, it's just to prove that the moral decisions that you might consider obvious at the face values of them, they become rather more complicated when you actually think deeply about them. The Forgotten City is, let's say, also a similar moral experiment where you are in an isolated community of about 20 people living under the rule with which they have come to call the Golden Rule. And the rule is simple: the many shall suffer for the sins of the one. And you are told that if even a single person commits a sin, all the people in the city would turn to gold. And you are called in this city to, because someone has committed a sin that day, and they have made a time loop in which you stepped in, and now you are stuck in there. The only way to get out is if you find the person who broke the Golden Rule, and when you find it, there would be no reason for them to make the portal, and then your coming here in this city would be impossible. That's the only way out of the city, as they tell you, because if you look for it, you won't find any other way. So you're stuck there with only you, which with the, let's say, power to decide, and you have the power to change what's going to happen to that city. Okay. Now, when I first played it, I wasn't having such high hopes, but it sure as hell seemed very different and very new in its concepts, and it also was very short, so I thought, why not give it a try? And I would agree that some of the other games also explore the moral bipolars or dilemmas, if you will, like The Witcher 3 has some of the most amazing morally ambiguous stories. Uh, uh, some of them coming to mind are the Bloody Baron's quest line, and the one of the side quests, which was Wild at Heart. Okay, and Mass Effect trilogy also puts you in a very difficult position, like when you have to decide to end or not to end the genophage, or would you rather trick a whole species into thinking that you have ended it, but actually you didn't. Now they do an amazing job in putting you in difficult spots, but nothing else compared to this small indie game that has slipped under your radar, as the whole game's premise is exploring the morality and what's right and what's wrong, and not just in your opinion, right or wrong, but objectively. You might think that, sometimes something is right, but it turns out that it broke the golden rule, so it wasn't right after all. Like, is it moral to steal to save someone's life? Well, you might think it could be overlooked in the real world, where almost everything is overlooked anyways, but if it has such drastic effects as letting everyone die, then on the other hand, you might save one person. So is it really a risk you would be willing to take? You do not need constant combat to make it delightfully fascinating, to unravel each of the city's many delicate layers. And the deeper you go, the more obvious it becomes that a life without clear crime is no utopia. And and is and murder is still murder, even in the times of crisis. Or is it? Is it? Well, I'll leave it for you to find out. Okay, now let's talk about the time loop mechanic that the city uses, the Forgotten City, the game. Though the time mechanic is pretty amazing, but its right implication and making it so that it's not overused or misused is very important. And Forgotten City does it perfectly. And also the answer that if these people can make the loop, why can't they, use it for themselves? Which, when you play the game, answer would be answered. And if you know how the time loop works, actually, in the game, now it's a very interesting detail. If you were careful in listening how the time loop works, and when they explained its mechanic, you can literally end the game in 5 minutes. But then again, it's up to the player how much attentive they were, which is an amazing mechanic and makes you wonder that the developers put a lot of love into it. Like, if you talk to someone and it contradicts someone else, or later you find out that that person was lying, then you can travel back in time and confront them for it. Means you would have a dialogue, which you would preserve the information from your previous loop, and then you can confront people on their lies too, which makes you think that is lying moral. But well, then again, okay, combat. Well, I know that the combat is a make or break deal for some people, and they would be happy to know that it's not completely void of it, though it's pretty less in quantity, let's say. It's not completely void of it, though. That's a plus. And there's not much combat, though, since its main focus is on the story aspect, and it's very short. It's just 10 hours long, 10-hour long barely, It's a good thing though that it's not diluted, or for the span of about 30 hours to make it appealing to the appealing to the masses, which well, we have seen a lot of this year, like like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for example, which had about 50 hours of actually interesting content. I would say actually just 10-20 hours of actually interesting content, which were bloated to the point of 300 hours. And though I like the 50 hours I spent on Assassin's Creed 2 better than the 300 hours of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And now when I need to tell someone that bigger doesn't mean better, I'll ask him to try the Forgotten City. I hope this review helps you decide and try something out of your league, or just give this new game a try, this new concept a try. I would be really happy. And please, if you don't mind, just subscribe and hit